Right, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be drawing and painting the rainbow macaw. So these guys are beautifully brightly coloured, and yesterday I received my Smart Art box and I absolutely love the colours and I wanted to play with them some more. So I've got ecoline in red, blue, yellowish green and black, and I also have my Art Alternatives dual tip pens. So I'm going to be using all of those again to create this beautiful macaw, rainbow macaw. So I'm going to start with a pencil drawing today. Yesterday I didn't start, I just started straight off with the pens, but these guys are a little bit more complex to draw than a crane. So I'm going to draw their hooked beak. I'll get that in first. I'll measure everything against the beak. So I measure the whole of the proportions against whatever part I draw first usually. So his beak, so that's the top of his beak, is about 3/4 the width of his head. So if I go up here, they've got a strange shaped head. They've got sort of, so if I do that, then I've got 3/4 of the length of his beak is the width of his head. And then his head goes down on a sweeping motion like that. He's got a very deep lower beak, so it's the same width as the top of his beak. So I'll draw that in and it comes to about, just about to that part of the curve in his top part of his beak. And he's sort of a little bit looking away from us, just a little bit. He's got his head on a little bit of a tilt and he's got his eyes set back on his head. That's what I love about animal art, is when you see where all the different details are, like where their proportions are, because you know they have their eyes set on different parts of their bodies, they have, you know, their beaks are in different parts of their face. It's really fun observing. I really enjoy observing. Now his eye is just above that bottom part of his beak, so I've got it too low. So I'm going to have to erase that. And you always compare other parts, some parts, whatever you're working on, to other parts of the body. So I'm looking at his eye and I've just realised his eye is actually set above the bottom of his top of his beak. And it's a little bit more oval than that, but I can add that little teardroppy shape there, like that. Bring his feathers down like that, and then he's got his feathers come down a little bit on this side. I'm only going to be doing his head today because there's a lot of colour and a fair bit of detail. Okay, so that's all right. I'm happy with that for a base drawing. So now I'm going to go in with my dual tip pen. And I'm going to use the pen side of it. Now these will dissolve also when I add watercolour over the top. These lines will dissolve like watercolour. So I can blend them in with the colours that I've got here on my little palette. So it doesn't matter if I've got quite a hard line to begin with. And you'll see I'm not doing the complete line up the top of the beak because that top of his beak is quite light. Now onto his body, he's got red feathers at the top here. So I'm going to use the red marker to mark in that part of his featherage. And I'll just come down around his eye. He's got a lighter colour around his eye, so I'll leave a little gap. And I'll get my brushes that I also got yesterday and use them on this. They're the calligraphy brushes. And now he's got green on the back part of his head. So I'll use the green coming onto here, green and yellow. And I can put this pen onto my palette and add water, and it will also dilute it and become a usable colour for me on my palette, which is good fun. And he's got that green coming down the back. Come over here. So this is just the rough base drawing. I've got to do the bottom beak too, so I better do the bottom beak. So, and I like using the pen nib. These have got a brush nib, but I really like using the pen nib because I adore pen drawing. Okay. So I come down here, I can draw the complete bottom part of the beak, like that. And he's nearly all red. Whoops, a daisy. Whoop. My orange just flew away, better go grab that. There we go. And he's ready orange coming down here. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, that's a very, very rough. I'll draw his eye in with this yellow ecoline marker. I'll leave a tiny little bit of white. And this does act like watercolour. If you use it while it's still wet, if you put the other colours in, it will bleed into the other colours, which I quite like. To me, that's just a fun little, you know, it creates nice effects, interesting effects. I'll use the brush end to go around the edge here. You see how that sort of, that's because that's wet. The black does bleed in around the edge, but that's fine because actually when you look at this little bird's eye, it does have a little bit of discoloration. I'll just stay into the middle of the pupil though, like that. I'll change it, I'll make that bigger. Okay, I quite like that. And I'm going to add a little touch of orange because that'll bleed out as well into that yellow. And that'll help to soften, or because they've got shadows in their eyes, and it'll help to soften the look. There we go, like that. That creates a little bit of a shine in the eye, an interesting little bit of a look. So now we're going to get into the actual paint. So I'm going to use the brushes I also got yesterday, which are these calligraphy brushes, and I really enjoyed using them. So I'm going to use them again. So I'm going to go straight in. I'm going to go dip into my red, wet my brush, dip into my red. And like I said, the pen marker, the pen on the end, that I've used in the outline, will dissolve into, oops, I've got a bit of hairy bits on my brush, into the watercolour. I've got to get a bit of cloth. Get me a little bit of cloth to wipe my brush, get me fairy bits off my brush. Come in and around. I'll take a few layers to do this. It'll take, I'll work on one layer at a time. Just exactly the same as I would with the normal watercolour. And he's actually got a little bit of this red. Comes around his eye. Down to the back there. And he's got little pin feathers around his eye. So I'll pop those in, just using the end of my brush, the very tip. These have got a beautiful tip on them. They haven't got the brand on them that I can see, but yeah, I'm really enjoying them. And I've got, you know, quite a collection of watercolour brushes, but I am really enjoying these ones. So now, he's got orange on him. I'm going to actually add a bit more red now that I've said that. I'm going to go in with a little bit more red up here. A little bit of a strengthened tone there. A little bit stronger there. So just pure pigment, less water. So if you want it stronger coloured, you just use the same colour, just less water with it. More water will make it paler. Less water will keep its full strength. So I just drop that in there like that. Okay, and I can also go back in with the pen. So I'm going to make a green, so blue and yellow make green. I just had to think then. Blue and yellow make green, so I'll use there we go. So I've mixed up my green, or you can't see it, there we go. Blue and yellow make green, so I'll pop that in there. So I received, yeah, 4 colours, but I can mix pretty much anything I want to with them. So, which is handy. That's where, if you're not sure of your colours, grab a colour wheel. Colour wheels really help you with mixing. That's how I learnt, I bought myself a colour wheel and studied it and used it for reference whenever I needed to mix colours when I didn't have a colour. So I'm just going to go over, and you can see it, that dissolves that pen line on the outside, which softens up the whole painting, which is really good. And I didn't erase my pencil line, so I'm going to mix a bit more blue, a bit more yellow, make a bit more green, like that. Come down and around. He's got some beautiful colours on him, this bird, he really does. Got to go right up into that red there. Okay, now I'm going to make an orange. So the orange is, oh, I've got grey all over me. I've spilt that, haven't I? Okay, I'll just clean that up, shall I? Whoops. Big whoops. I'll have to get some, I've tainted my yellow, so that's okay. I'll get some more of that. Grab my yellow. Oh, it's chartreuse, it's yellowy green. And I will just absorb that up into my bit of cloth like that, the tainted paint, and I'll just put some fresh in, and that's problem solved. Just like that. These liquid watercolours are very good, and they do, like, you do get a lot of use out of them. They go a long way. So again, get back. I seem to use the one brush a lot, so I'm going to go a bit of red, pop my yellow in my red, and make an orange. A bit more yellow in there. So red and yellow make orange. It makes a sort of a dirty orange, but that's fine. And I'm going to take that around the orangey parts of his body. And I will strengthen that colour as I go. But the base layer will be the lightest. So you work from light to dark. So pop that in, come down and around. Yeah, I'm a bit excited with these products. And I love this paper too. I've always been a bit of a paper fan. Love it. And this is Hahnemule's bamboo paper. And it is gorgeous. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm going to be definitely getting some more of this. It's what is it called? I can't even remember now. With me a bit of paper, hang on. I could open it up, but I don't want to move my painting. So it's Hahnemule. Where is it? Oh, Hahnemule Bamboo Carnet de Voyage. Very French sounding, very exotic sounding. But very good paper. Very impressed with it. So now I'm going to start coming up onto the feathery bits with a bit more stronger pigment, a bit more red, reddish orange. So I just add a little bit more red to my mixture. And I start to feather coming around the bottom there. He's a bit darker underneath, just a little bit. And I'm going to actually grab a slightly bigger brush. So I clean it, then, whoops, get a bit more water on it so I can get a bit more pigment there. Get a bit more red, a bit more yellow, yellowy green, or chartreuse, that's what it's called. I don't believe I've ever used chartreuse before, so it's a bit of fun. I had a bit of a giggle. I'm like, oh, I've heard of chartreuse. I'd never seen chartreuse. So now I know what chartreuse is. So now I'm just adding, you can see I'm just adding the feather texture. Take that down and around. Just the very tips of his feathers. And I'm considering giving him a background, a blue background. I'm sort of a little bit undecided. Now his face, that's going to be a tough one because he's got a beigey coloured beak. So I'm actually going to use yellow, but I'm going to dilute it right down with water. The top of his beak is beige. So I'm just using the yellowy colour that I've got, the chartreuse, and I'm diluting it right down to a very watery consistency. And I'll take that, the black will bleed into it, which is fine, I want it to, because the bottom of his beak is actually grey. And I can take away those lines, they won't look as heavy. So he has got a darker tip on his beak. And while that's wet, see what I've done there? While that's wet, I'm going to drop in, I'll wet the whole top of that beak actually, with that very diluted yellow mixture. Then I'm going to drop in that dark colour and let it flow back in like that. And it won't take up the whole beak, I hope, but the parts that I want it to. Because this part of his beak is dark and that part of his beak is dark. And while it's wet, it will flow, and this is a fun way to practice to see how this particular watercolour works, and I'm really liking it. It flows nicely on this paper, because each paper reacts differently. So now I'm actually going to wet this bottom beak, and you can see that ink or the pen that I've put down, it instantly bleeds into it, which is absolutely fine because I don't mind that at all. And then I'm going to drop that dark colour in on the bottom beak and let it flow like that. There we go. All right, awesome. And I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to go back into, I'm going to make another green, so go for my blue again, go for my yellow again, make a slightly stronger green this time. It's a little bit darker, just a little bit. And I'm going to add some feather texture onto these top bits where his feathers sort of jut out a little bit, and add some soft ends. And these calligraphy brushes give you a beautiful end tip. So you can see how fine a line you can get. If you're really careful and steady hand, you can get a beautiful soft line. So I'm just doing the ends of the feathers. I've got a coffee here. I keep forgetting to drink it. I get so buried in what I'm doing that I forget to drink my coffee, and it always goes cold. I wonder if any other artists, put in the comments below if your coffee also goes cold when you're drawing and painting. I always bring one with me, and I never ever drink it while it's hot. Alright, so now I'm going to do the same with the red. So I'm going to go pure red pigment, except he's got littler. I might have to get slightly, I might have to add a bit of blue to that and make it a purpley colour, just a fraction. Just a fraction, just to darken that up, get a bit of a shadow colour happening on his head feathers, because he does have slightly darker head feathers in patches where there's shadow and light reflecting and all of that jazz. So I'll just add little blobs of that around. Come closer to his beak a bit now, because he's darker around there. He's not just one flat colour. It's good to learn to see shadows and lights and darks and things. It's fun to observe and see all the little nuances. And this is a sketch, you know, it's a fun piece. It's not a high pressure piece. You can just kick back and have a bit of fun and play with shadows and play with your colours. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. You just do it again. Practice makes perfect. Alright. So I'm going to make up a bit more of that purple, slightly stronger over here. I'm going to come down onto his cheek, onto these bits down here a little bit. Get a bit of variation going down there. A bit more shadow in there. Alright. And I use blue for my shadows. So I'm going to literally get that blue, pure blue, and just add a ton of water and into the shadow part of his face. Oh, my brush has gone all hairy. I need to straighten out my ends. There we go. And I'm just going to add that very pale blue to take away the brightest bright white on his face, because he has sort of shadowy bits. I'm going to use the brush to take around the edge of his eye, drag that pen line out a little bit, and that'll help with the shadow around his eye as well, like that. And I can drag that down onto here and fill in that little gap there. There we go. And now I can actually go in and start to add a little bit of the finer detail. So that's dried pretty much. So he's got little lines down his beak. So I'm going to add those lines in Whoops, and that would be my little dog saying hi to the world. I apologise. Bear's a talker. He's a Jack Russell, and he talks. And my dogs are always with me when I'm creating. I've got my 2 Jack Russells under my art table. They've got their little doggy bed under there, so they help me with my artistic endeavours. So there we go. So that's that. So I've just added a little bit more pure pigment. So very tiny amount of water, just enough to help it flow. That's it. I'm going to go back into that red. So I'm going to go a bit more red, bit of blue, make it a bit purpley. I might try a bit of that dark with it and see what happens. Oh, that makes a nice purple. So I've added the black, which is sort of a greyish black, the blue and the red, and it's made a lovely purple. A lovely, like almost a, I don't know, it's a lovely dark purple. Beautiful shadow colour. And I'll just add that around in a couple of spots. I've got to round up his eye a little bit more. I can add that onto his beak as well, just to get a bit of interest, so it's not just grey. Because I'll take that onto the tip of his beak, because yeah, I always, when I use dark colours, I usually mix my own blacks, and which is a brown. Usually, if you add a brown and a blue, or make black, or 3 colours together, 4 colours together. I use brown and blue, makes black beautifully. But this is a very dark purple, which will suffice, I should say. And there we go. I reckon he's just about done. That was a little bit of fun. I had fun doing that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I'm going to sign him, and I will see you guys for my next video. So I used Art Alternatives Dual Tips and my Ecoline watercolours, liquid watercolours. Love them. Love them, love them, love them. So again, that was from my Smart Art box that I received yesterday. And this, I thought about it all last night. I thought, oh gosh, I really want to use those again. They were good fun. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have an awesome day. Click like and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I will see you all next video. Okie doke. See you then.